e.c., we have the entity in those relations with the universe and universal forces, as are latent and exhibited in the present entity. The body entered in the Earth's plane in this experience in the early hours of the day, 5:45 a.m. In entering, we find the entity coming under the influence of Mercury, Neptune, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, with those astrological influences of the Moon, with the variations as appear through the application of wills respecting these. Astrologically, many of the innate experiences, and much as has to do with the body as related to same, or groups, would be in keeping with the experiences of the body. As much as has to do with the development of the mental forces and the application of self as respecting these, as would become individual in its application, these would not conform to those ordinary rules as have been set forth as astrological. Coming under the influences, then, astrologically, we find one whose mental capacities and abilities are good, yet ever being weighted by those in Neptune and Venus finds individual contradiction as related to individuals. That is, individuals often feel the entity, in its application of the mental forces and abilities, is not applying self in directions that are for the best, as others see it. Yet, as a leader for a group, or as one that would influence groups or masses, the entity's mental forces far surpass many that are called speakers, writers, teachers, or even exhorters. Hence the entity finds itself with a great many of the mass influenced by self, and often finds itself estranged or at variance with many who should be the closest friends, yet those that are the closest friends, associates, knowing the body, the personality, the individuality, if you please, better learn to love the entity for its worth to them, not as eye servants, but as one appreciating, feeling, innately, the influence of one with an experience worthwhile, and one made worthwhile to many. Under the influences of Venus and Mars, love for those things as pertain to military affairs, yet peaceful in its attitude, not wholly as a pacifist in extreme, yet rather as one that weighs same with those of the mental and of the application of the psychological influences under such conditions. This bringing changes, then, and has ever, and will yet bring much change to the entity, even in this experience. That is, force of arms, whether of firearms or of those elements that have to do with the same. In Jupiter comes that of the bigness, nobleness, and the broad-mindedness of the entity, and this, varied with the elements as are seen and as has been given, shows how the variations come individually, and to groups and masses. One, then, that is in the position of meaning much to many. One loving or desiring changes of scene, and in varied circumstances, knowing and feeling that to experience the influence that changes or alters individuals and groups is the way for self to understand others the better. One that loves music, and the art of music, as a critic, rather than as applied, as the voice of individuals or of nature, rather than as instrumental, so far as any individual instrument concerned, rather in groups and masses, and their altering in harmony and its changes, for at times harmony is desired by the entity. Then contrasts are necessary for the entity to understand conditions that, to the entity, comparisons may be drawn. Hence innately in every element, whether in affairs of the heart, or life, of position, of stations in life, there is ever the comparison drawn by the entity. Well, then, that the entity attain for self an ideal, rather than mere ideas, drawing often upon the innate influences of self as related to the mysteries of life, as pertaining to the mysteries of the beyond, in which the entity often delves, that there may be for the self a greater fullness of the experiences of the entity. To experience, to the entity, is to understand. In appearances, these, as may be seen, are from their influences changeful, and under many conditions, and each has its changeful and interchangeful influence in the present experience. In the one before this we find in that period when the first of the establishment of homes in the new land. The entity among those of the first of the families in that land now known as Massachusetts, and of the peoples who were of the first settlers, and true in this entity may it be claimed for self of the Puritans. Puritanic, even, in the manner in which the entity brought up, yet holding self aloof from the things which the entity endured. Understanding more of the influence of close to nature, and to the ever-changeful things in nature, feeling same in self as a bar. The entity gained in the manner in which the entity served, even those that persecuted the most. In that experience, the entity finds in the present that innate feeling of desire of expression of self's thoughts, self's inner feelings, yet often hampered by the fear of what will people say? In the one before this we find in that land now known as India. The entity then among those peoples who were persecuted for being of the sex that was being used as the means, or the channel only, through which mankind, or man, might be given an heir. The entity thought deeply. The entity suffered much in body, in mind, in repression. Yet in the name that the entity bore many peoples have found that which answered, for the time, at least. In the name Madlaji. In the present the entity has innately that desire to know more of what such influences brings in the hearts of those that are used, abused, and made to be manual servants. Or the study of India's religion has ever been innate in the entity, and will be, for the entity understands much that is not seen by but few. In the one before this we find in that land now known as America, in that land known as that of the West. The entity then among those that were come into the land as immigrants from the Far East, now, or from the now known as India land, settling with those peoples in the plains now known as Arizona. The entity among those, then, that set up this combination of cults that built in the land the temples and the dwellings in the rocks. The entity then gained much through that experience, becoming the priestess to those peoples, known then as the Hapapulpic people, and giving much to the aborigines of the land, and understanding, and of same came those that made of the land, or of the metals and the clays, much of that was later taken in the Yucatan land, in the Mexico land, into the southern land, being driven down by the heavy men from the north. The entity among those that immigrated again in its latter years, setting up the new, in the new land, that which became as the land of gold. In the name ZKLPU. In the present there is seen, innately, the association of any gold or filigree work as being associated with the tenets of religious thought. The entity seeking rather to know the effect in the present of same upon the intuitive forces of man. In the one before this we find in that land now known as Egypt. The entity then among those who were in command of the rule when the land was overrun by him who set up the new rule in the land. The entity was then brought low from its position of power, yet came to be a mighty one with those of the natives put in comparison to those brought into the land. Then the companion of the one that was the wife, as would be termed in the present, to the interpreter of the truths gained, when there was the attempting to make the understanding of the relationships of man to man, and of man's relationship to the created force, or energy, and the applying of those in man's experience. Hence the entity in that finds that the care of others is ever just in and out of reach of the entity's or bodily endeavours, yet someone ever dependent upon the activities, physical and mental, or the entity. Then in the name is Abdloxt. In this experience the entity finds that in the dreams there often comes that vision of a temple through which the entity wanders, seeking for the council, for one that must be the rule there. The flames often interfere, yet as each step is gained towards the altar that the entity seeks, there comes, as it were, a new chapter in the life of the entity. This has occurred as a dream to this entity, 172, at least 4 times, seeking in this temple, lost in a crowd, finding a seat among those that are of the mighty. In the one before this we find in this same land, when many changes were wrought, when the upheavals caused much change in the surface of the lands. The entity then among those who fled to the mountains, that later became Mount Harib by name, and the entity set up that of the first kingdom as a rule in that land, gathering the peoples out of chaos into a more circumspect surroundings, a labour common to all. In the name Yud, the entity gained through this experience, especially in the service as rendered, and much of that as is sought in the present, of experience, in all its phases, great or small, is innate from this. As to the abilities in the present, as the teacher, the writer, the minister to many, may the entity gain for self, keeping ever that as is felt, of the ideal must at least be beyond attainment, in the flesh. We are through for the present.